Okay, welcome back. Now we're going to go over formulas. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come over to my formulas tab. And you'll notice that I already have some data in there. So if you want to follow along with me, please pause the video now, type in all the information that you see here. Each one of these is in its own cell, and we can follow along, okay? So what I want to go over are some very basic formulas first. Now let's say that we have our 4 students, and if any of you got the 4 names and where they came from, good for you. If you did not, Gene, Paul, Peter, and Ace are the 4 original members of the band Kiss. Okay, so if I have Gene here and I've got all his grades, and I want to figure out what his total number of points are, all I need to do is come over here and enter a formula. And you start off every formula with the equal sign. That immediately tells the program that you are using a formula. Then we decide what formula we're going to use. In this case, we just want to add. So we want to find the sum of these numbers. So I'll just start typing in SUM, and there it is. I can either double click or just put my parenthesis in there, but I'm going to double click in this case. So as my parenthesis, and it gives me an option. It says number 1, number 2, ... meaning etc. So all I need to do is select the range that it's in. 2 ways of doing this. I can either manually type in my range that I want to sum, or I can come over here, click, and just drag it over, and you see that it automatically puts the range in there for me. Now, key thing to get a new formula to work correctly is putting that in parentheses. Alright, as soon as you put in that in parentheses, then the function is closed. It's ended. I can just now press enter, and it adds up and tells me that Gene Simmons has a total of 370 points. Okay, so let's say I want to find out for the rest of the guys. I can easily just come over here, use my autofill handle, and just drag it on down. And there you go. See? Now if I click here, you see the formula. It goes from B3 to E3. So pretty simple. So let's say now that I want, okay, 370, that's great. That's a good number. But that doesn't tell me what his grade is. So we need to figure out what his grade is. So what we can do here is we can start our equals, and we can just take this number, F2, and we can use our multiply sign, which is going to be the shift 8 or the asterisk. Okay, you use the asterisk to multiply, and we can, or excuse me, we're not going to multiply, we're going to divide. See, even I make mistakes. We're going to use the slash to divide, and we are going to assume that each test is worth 100 points, so there's 4 tests, 400 points, and we're just going to manually put that in there. So we're telling it to take the number in F2 and divide it by 400. And that gives us a 0.925, which we can now click here, come over to our home, make it a percentage, and it rounded to a 93%. But let's say we don't want it to round, we want it to show 2 decimal places. Remember, we can just use our decimal place increase, and there we go. Now, same thing. I can just use my autofill and just drag it on down here. And there we go. So we've got Gene with a 92.5, Paul with an 86.25, Peter with a 66.25, and Ace with a 79 even. Alright? Pretty simple stuff. Now let's say I want to figure out what my average score is for each test. Okay? Same thing. Come over here We hit our equal button, and the formula for average is just AVG. Put in our parenthesis there. Tell it we want this range, our end parenthesis, press enter, and it looks like they want us to use the whole word average, so we'll just hit yes, and there we go. They don't want you to just put in AVG, they want you to type out the whole word average now. Okay? So our average score for that test is a 78.75. Now, I've shown you how to manually input these functions. So now I guess I need to show you the easier way to do it. If you like the easier way, would be to go to formulas again, and you see right here it says insert function. I can click this right here, and right here is a list of all, it opens up a dialog box, the insert function dialog box of all the functions that we need. And I can just type in a brief description of what I want. I can come here and choose a certain type. A lot of times the most commonly used ones are right here, so we're going to go to average again, and it brings up another dialog box for me. So I can easily select it, and you see that it already has selected range C2 to C5, which C2, C5 is exactly what I want. So it's telling me I'm going to get an 82.25, which sounds about right looking at the scores. So I click OK, and there we go. And again, I'm just going to autofill the rest of them here. Alright? Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't there an easier way to do this? Yes. If you're using average or you're using sum, there are two different places you can do it. You can do it from right here, where you have this little summation button, and you can see I can actually do an auto sum, an auto average, an auto count numbers, a max, and a min. Okay? Or I can do it in the formula tab under the auto sum, same options. Okay? So I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to do an auto average, and I'm going to click it, and it automatically picks up the range that I want, says has the average in there. All I need to do, press the enter button, and it even formats it for me, tells me that I have a format. So there we go. We now have an average of an 81%. So I'm going to go ahead over here and just title it so we know. An average of 81%, and then our final grades. And let's say we want to separate these. I can easily come in and highlight this row right here, and just like in Word, I can insert a border on the top so that it separates it a little bit easier, so that it makes it easier to see. Okay? Now, let's say we wanted to do a max min. We can do the same thing. Come over here, we can use our auto, we can use our max. Now notice that it picks up C6. We don't want C6 because C6 is our average. So we just take our little line, and we can just, if we can grab it here, and it might be tough to grab, but we can just highlight just these 4 rows and press enter, and it tells me my max is a 98. Same thing with over here. Come over here, I can do my min. Again, make sure you only get the scores, not the averages or the max. Press enter, and there you go. Our min for that was a 70, our max was a 98. Pretty easy stuff. Now let's say I want to insert a row here. I can highlight this whole row, right click, and I can choose to insert. And it'll insert a row right here for me. And let's say I want to go ahead and put in the scores right here. 100, 100, 100, 100. And I'm going to go ahead and just click this, because if you notice, the sum is the first one. So when I click this, it'll auto sum for me. And there we go, we've got our 400. Now, let's say I want to change my formulas. Okay, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to just erase all of this. Alright, we're just going to clear all. And you see that I have an error because I no longer have any scores in here. Okay, but I'm going to leave that there because it'll add up. And I want to say that I want to take the score that is here, 370 in F3, and I want to divide it by the score that is here. Alright, and I can go ahead and I can press enter. And there we go, it gives me my score back. Come up here, I tell it, make it a percentage, put it over 2 decimal places. There you go. Simple as that. Now that wasn't hard. But now, watch what happens when I use the autofill. All of a sudden, somehow, he has a 93.24. Well, didn't he have a B before? How does he have a 93.24? Well, let's look at the formula. Do we notice anything wrong? Well, we're taking F4 and we're dividing it by F3 now. Well, we want to divide it by F2. So how can we make this autofill work? Well, I'm going to go ahead and erase these contents here. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to show you something. You can make the column or the row or both what they call an absolute cell. Alright? By doing this, all we need to do is put the $sign, which is the shift above the 4, in front of where we want to be absolute. So if we just wanted the column to be absolute, we didn't mind that it moved rows, you would choose that one. If you just wanted the row to be absolute, you would choose to put it in front of the 2. But if you don't want it to move from that cell, you just do that. Put a $sign in front of the F and a $sign in front of the 2. Now, that makes that cell absolute. So we press enter, and we look here, so it says F3 divided by F2 absolute. So when I use my autofill now, I come up with the same scores that I had before. And when you click on them, you'll see that the F2 is still absolute. So even though the front cell we're dividing by moves, that we're dividing into, what we're dividing by, the F2, never moves with that absolute cell there, okay? Now that works with your averages, that works with your sums, anything that has a cell that doesn't need to move. You can keep that absolute cell in there. Alright? I want to go over one more little formula here real quick. And I'm going to go into my insert functions. And you'll see the count formula right here. Okay? What this does is it counts, and you'll see it gives you a little description, counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. It doesn't count the numbers inside the cell, it just counts the number of cells. So if I click OK, and I choose the value, let's go, I can click my little arrow here, and I can choose from here to here. Okay, come back. I have 16 cells. Well, if we look 4 by 4, 16 cells, press OK, so our count works. You may not have to use this count, but I want you to understand what it does. It does not count the numbers inside there. If you want to add the numbers inside there, you use the sum function. This is why I wanted to show it to you, because it does get confusing. You don't want to misuse these. Count counts the number of cells. Sum adds the data that's in the cells. And real quick, if I want to make this absolute, I can make this whole range absolute by just putting $signs like we talked about right there. Pretty simple stuff, okay? Be sure to watch this a couple times if you need to. I know I'm kind of going through this a little quick, but you can rewatch these videos over and over again. So make sure you understand this stuff. If you don't understand it, please contact me, okay? I'm not going to get too much more in depth. I want to show you guys how to do what they call vertical lookup. It's a really neat thing that you guys can do. We're going to use this table right here. So I would recommend you saving this table to do the vertical lookup. But I'm going to do a whole lecture just on the vertical lookup. So pay attention and get ready for that. And I hope you guys have started on your first assignment and are, at least looking at these questions while we're going through the lectures, because as you watch them, you'll see that there's different questions right here that match exactly what we're doing. All right? So good luck.